Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Max Velocity weather forecast. And in today's forecast, we'll be talking about the largest storm so far this fall that'll be impacting the United States next week. And this will bring a lot of threats, including severe weather, a large cool down, and perhaps even a lot of rainfall to a large chunk of the United States. And there could be a winter storm along with this. I'll be giving you the latest breakdown on everything that you need to know in this forecast. But let's begin with what's happening across the United States today, and we'll first begin with the northeast United States, and this is where there's been some fairly active weather over the past 48 hours. Notice there's actually a low pressure system centered just over parts of Michigan as well as parts of the northern Ohio Valley. This has been bringing some rainfall along with a fairly weak cold front overall, but it is stretching up and down the east coast. Overall, this will continue to move to the east over the next couple of days, not really bringing any major impacts, but we will continue to see some pretty heavy rainfall across parts of New England. Now, for the Great Plains, not much is happening here right now. We actually have a large ridge in place that's back down in the Four Corners states, and what this will be doing for the next really 3 to 4 days, so throughout the weekend, will continue to bring dry and warm weather to a large chunk of not just the western tier of the United States, but also the Great Plains. But unfortunately, this weather pattern is only going to last the next few days because as we go into next week, we're going to see a huge collision of different storms. We're actually going to have a hurricane come out of the Pacific Ocean, and what this will do is actually go into parts of the southern plains, bringing lots of moisture, and this will start to fuel the threat for severe weather as well as a lot of rainfall in a large chunk of the southern and central plains. We'll also be watching a storm coming out of Canada, and that could also bring the threat for some severe weather and a winter storm. So it's going to get very messy next week, and we're going to break down every single detail of these storms in depth for you in this forecast. But let's first begin with what's happening with the weather pattern here across the United States, and to look at that, we're going to look at the jet stream. This is the upper level wind dynamics here. Notice as of tomorrow, we have a fairly strong jet stream across a large chunk of the United States. That stretches from Canada back into parts of the southeast United States. Here's your low pressure system, and with that low pressure system, it's actually bringing a fairly strong northerly wind, which is bringing somewhat of a cool down to some of the east coast, but it's really not much. We're only seeing a very minor difference. The biggest difference is back where this low pressure system is, which is back near the Ohio Valley, and the temperature difference again is maybe 5 to 10 degrees at most. By no means is this an Arctic blast. Now, as we go into next week, things are going to become very active. So as we get closer to Monday night into Tuesday morning, we'll be watching a low pressure system in the upper levels that's going to be down near Arizona and California. And as this continues to move to the east and northeast, it's actually going to become a little bit more intensified, bringing the potential for some very heavy rainfall, maybe even a couple of days of severe weather to parts of the southern and central plains. And I'll show you what that looks like here in just a second. Going into Wednesday into Thursday, we're going to be watching two different areas by this point. So notice that low pressure system over New Mexico. This will be bringing some rainfall and again potentially some severe weather on Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe even into Thursday across parts of the southern and central plains and eventually going toward the Midwest. And then we'll be watching another low pressure system back up in the Pacific Northwest. So two completely different areas to watch for. Notice as we go closer to Thursday into Friday though, that low pressure system races off to the north and northeast through the Midwest. It weakens out. Then we have another low pressure system over the Rocky Mountains by late Thursday into Friday, and then we have another low pressure system back over in southwest Canada going into Thursday night into Friday morning. It's going to be mayhem next week when it comes to all these different storms. And then if you look down closer to Florida, there's just this dominant high pressure system. So really wacky weather next week without a doubt, and wacky weather Wednesday will definitely be pretty interesting next week. Notice as we go into late Friday into Saturday, that low pressure system that'll be over the Rocky Mountains will race off to the north and northeast, and we'll have another low pressure system back over here that's going to be coming out of Canada. Again, a lot of stuff happening next week, and I'm going to break down for you what this actually looks like on the radar here in just a moment, because it looks pretty complicated with what we're looking at here. If everything goes according to plan on this forecast, we'll probably have a pretty intense jet stream back up in parts of the northern tier of the United States, and that also could lead to some cooler weather going into next week or really the following week. So getting closer to Halloween, things become very uncertain by that point since we are very far out, and things are already uncertain to begin with going into next week because we have three different components that we're watching, three different storms. So things are definitely going to change over the next several days. Again, we'll keep you posted with the latest details. Here's what we're looking at in moisture for next week. So notice the dew points really as of this weekend pretty low across the southern plains, 30s and 40s. By the time we get to Tuesday or even Monday night, we'll be watching for dew points into the mid 60s across Texas and Oklahoma, and this is really just fuel for some severe weather. So there will be definitely some buoyancy there, and if we get any primed setups there, we definitely could see some severe weather. Another thing we need to look at is the instability. This is basically putting putting gasoline into a vehicle, but in this sense, we are fueling severe storms with instability. And notice there's going to be definitely some instability across parts of Texas and as well as Oklahoma. Really, the best day, I think, for any severe weather chance will probably be either Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. The GFS model has a pretty sharp area here of instability on Thursday afternoon and evening that stretches from Kansas back into Texas. So right now, again, there's some uncertainty there on when we'd see severe weather. The predictability is pretty low right now, but there's definitely gonna be a better chance there sometime between Tuesday and Thursday, maybe even into Friday. All right, let's talk about the future radar here. So going into Sunday, we're really gonna have a pretty dominant surface ridge across the eastern tier of the United States. Now, as we go into Monday, things start to change a little bit. We'll have some rainfall coming out of Mexico going into Texas going into Monday. This definitely could spawn off some showers, maybe a couple of storms. Going to Tuesday, we might start to see some severe weather here. It seems to be a pretty low chance though for right now. And then once we go into Thursday, notice we're gonna get a lot more heavy rainfall here stretching from Kansas back into Texas. We also could see some rainfall back up into the Midwest. Notice back up here in the northern plains, we'll begin to be watching a winter storm potential late next week. What will happen? How much snow will we see? Again, those details are very thin right now since we are still about 7 days out, but it does seem likely that we'll at least see some snowfall out of the system that'll be coming out of Canada. Notice as we go into late Thursday, a lot of rainfall here across a pretty large area, primarily across the Midwest, but we'll also be watching for some rainfall and snowfall most likely near the Rocky Mountains. Going into Friday, that low pressure system races into the Midwest, so any snowfall that comes out of this will likely not be anything beyond a foot, but we very well could see some spotty isolated 12-inch readings if you're over in like the mountainous region, for example. It'll be sitting there a little bit more, but once it races off to the north and northeast, we're not going to see any crazy snowfall out of this. Going into the late weekend, things become way more uncertain. You'll notice again some snowfall the GFS model is picking up on, but we are looking way ahead of time. We're talking about 9 to 10 days out, and things change a lot, especially about 10 days out. Obviously, there's a lot of uncertainty regarding a winter storm, but I do want to show you where the snowfall would likely happen. This is what the GFS model is showing right now. It actually does indicate some areas seeing like upwards of 2 to 3 feet of snow. It's again way too early to really get to specifics on that, but I just want to kind of mention this would probably be the better chance of where we would see any snowfall going into late next week if a winter storm ends up materializing. But as of right now, again, the chances of that are a little bit more on the lower side. Again, we're kind of at like a 30 to 40% chance that we will actually see a winter storm, and there's probably about a 60 to 70, maybe 80% chance, or at least be a couple inches of snowfall across those areas. So again, stay tuned. Things will definitely change over the next several days. But another thing that will likely come with this setup would be a pretty large cool down. So as of today, we have above normal temperatures across a large chunk of the Great Plains, a little bit cooler on the East Coast. That's because of that low pressure system. Once we go into next week, though, things will start to change. So we'll be watching a lot of storms. The ones that would bring a cool down, though, would not be the one coming out of Mexico, because we're gonna have a strong southerly wind. It's not coming from Canada, for example. If they come from Canada, we get a lot cooler weather because of the strong northerly winds and the much colder air masses up there. Look at this by Wednesday. This is the air mass we'll be watching for initially going into the late week. So by Thursday into Friday, the GFS model pulls this a little bit further down to the south here through Kansas. That's about it, though, kind of trickling into maybe Oklahoma and maybe Texas, but it wouldn't be a dramatic cool down. Where you see these purple colors, that's where we're looking at for the largest cool down, which would be upwards of 10 to 20 degrees below normal temperatures. This is going by Sunday into Monday. Again, notice we might see another cold blast out of all this. This actually could reach even further down to the south and potentially going toward the East Coast, but a lot more uncertainty does remain as we get closer to Halloween and as well as into early November. So stay tuned. We'll keep you posted with the latest. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video.